Hi everybody and welcome to the Surface Interval in association with the 2-Minute Foundation. Today we're talking about deep diving. Now, diving down deep for a lot of divers is a sign of progression. You see it a lot in our training. Our maximum depth is usually the foremost in the advertising. This course, this will qualify you down to 18 meters. The next one takes you down to 30 meters. Next it's 40 meters and so on. It's very depth specific and focused on here's your new maximum depth. But diving down deeper shouldn't always be your goal. A lot of my favorite dives have been shallow dives with a maximum depth in its single digits. It's not always the deeper the better. So should I go deep? Is it worth it? One thing that you'll notice the deeper down you go is how dark and monochromatic everything gets. You should all have been taught that water absorbs light. So the more water light has to pass through, the more it gets absorbed. The more particles in the water as well, the darker it will get. The best to show you this is if you go down to one of the deep diving pools around the world. In the deepest part, if you get down there first, it's nice and bright. It's clear, crystal clear blue waters, but the more divers that join you down at the deepest section, all of their exhaled bubbles block and refract the light, so it gets dark super quick, even in that crystal clear water. Your eyes do naturally adjust to the darkness, it's what they're designed to do, but they can't adjust for the loss in red colours. Everything becomes very dull unless you bring a light down with you, and the less light means less plant life as well, and in turn less animal life. You'll still find things down there to look at, but they tend to be less flamboyant than they are on the surface. What's the point in being a bright and colourful fish if no one can literally see that colour at that depth? One reason you don't see too many divers in red or pink equipment is because underwater, red and pink stuff turns brown. With less light, you also get less heat. The sun warms up the surface and the heat does penetrate so far into the water, but the deeper down you go, the colder it gets. You'll actually find very thin lines called thermoclines where the water temperature just drops a few degrees in an instant. It's only a couple of degrees, but trust me, you will feel that temperature change. Your exposure protection is also getting thinner at depth. Because wetsuits are made from a foam material, all of those little air spaces are going to be compressing at depth. So your wetsuit isn't at warm the deeper down you go. As with the less light reducing wildlife, the temperature drop has a similar effect. There's kind of an empty zone in the middle where when it's shallow and warm, you'll find plenty of life up there, but you'll also find some species that like the colder water, only they like it cooler. So they'll be deeper than we can go, and they only come up to visit our deep depths for a short period of time before slinking back to the colder waters deeper down. So unless you can go really, really deep, most of the good stuff is up near the surface anyway. Like your wetsuit getting thinner the deeper you go, and as you should have learnt in your first diving course, you actually breathe more gas the deeper down you go. If your breathing rate doesn't change, a tank that you can breathe for 1 hour on the surface will only last about 15 minutes at 30 meters, and that doesn't take travel gas into account neither. Granted, with it being colder, you don't really want to stay at the deepest point very long, but you'll get to a point where you can actually watch the SPG needle move as you breathe. There's also shorter no deco limits. Because you're down deep, the gradient between your tissues and the gas that you're breathing means that more is actually being absorbed into your tissues faster. The longer you stay at deeper depths, the longer you have to take to come back up to the surface. So diving deeper can actually mean that you end up spending more time at a shallower depth decompression coming back up, ironically. The deeper you go, the fewer divers are there, and the divers around you tend to be much more disciplined as well, so you're far less likely to bump into someone else. Popular dive sites can get very busy, to the point where you need to hold back or swim around something because there's an entire group of divers just crowded around something that you might want to look at, but you have to skip over. Some dive sites are simply just out of reach to some divers because they're simply not qualified or don't have the right equipment set up to get to those depths and back safely. You're also far enough away from boat traffic to not ruin your dive. Boats are surprisingly loud underwater, and when you're in shallow water, you can actually feel the vibrations in your chest when some boats pass overhead. Deep down, you can sometimes hear them, kind of, but it's just kind of a rumble and a background rumble, and there's little chance of them hitting you. There's very few boats that have a 30-meter draft, so you're pretty safe. The only thing that you may need to worry about is people kind of dropping stuff on top of you, but that's kind of rare. Yeah, deco stops aren't the most fun that you'll ever have in the water. If you're happy with a few minutes of bottom time or not diving below 30 meters, then sure. But going below ensures that you are required to complete at least one stop. And if you think a 3-minute safety stop sucks, you know nothing of sitting there waiting yet. The first time that you do a deco stop, it feels kind of cool. This is what advanced divers do. It kind of feels weird doing a stop at a great depth and then another one shallowing up. But before long, you'll be completing stops at a variety of depths, and the deeper you go, the longer those stops get. If there's something to do and something to see at those depths, then great. That's the best thing. But sometimes those long stops can get really boring, and there's only so much tic-tac-toe you can play with your buddy. So is deep diving your goal? It's not a bad goal, but there should be a good reason beyond you just want to write some big numbers in your logbook. Let us know down in the comments if you think that deep diving is worth it, and of course why. Don't forget to check out the 2-minute charity and how you can help. It only takes 2 minutes, it's literally in the name, and if you're completing lots of deco stops, you'll have plenty of time just to collect some underwater rubbish. Thank you for watching Simply Scuba, and of course, safe diving.